Good evening and salutations, Bills Mafia. Welcome to the Friday Night Forecast. I'm your host, Travis Blakesley. And today we got the weathermen, the crew, Herm, the Buffalonian. How you doing, sir?
I'm in the house. I'm in the house.
You are in the house. And we got, for a special guest appearance, Mr. Vlad Jr. for MVP. How you doing, Evan?
I'm doing fantastic.
Clearly.
Yeah,
All
Vlad just hit
right, for the
another home run,
uninitiated.
I'm all good.
I like that.
For the uninitiated, the Forecast is a preview podcast where we bring you our predictions, takes, and forecasts. But not only that, we want to hear your predictions and forecasts. So if you have any takes, anything regarding the game, just drop it in the comments below and you'll get a chance to get your thoughts, your takes read on air. So let's start with last week. Quite disappointed. I don't think it really went the way any of us thought it would. It was rough on the offensive line. It was rough watching Allen kind of run for his life a little bit. Evan, what do you think factored in most regarding the outcome of last Sunday's game?
Oh, I mean, you already touched on it. Like the offensive line was the big thing. Something I mentioned earlier in the week was, as well as I thought the defense played, their inability to get a turnover was something that really cost them, even though they had a couple chances to. Because when you think back the last couple of years, there was always that one turnover that was like a big turning point for the team. You know, obviously last year you had the Taron Johnson pick six, and then the year before that you had, you know, they picked off Devlin Hodges 4 times, but you had the Trey one in particular that was a big turning point. So, like, honestly, the defense played very good. It's just that it was just that turnover that they couldn't get. And Doug says not a lot of pressure. No, but Ben was getting the ball out really quick, so I don't really know what else you can really do about that.
Yeah, we all touched on that.
Yeah.
We weren't, I didn't necessarily didn't think we were going to see those numbers. But I like the point you brought up about the turnover because, if Trey White didn't get that illegal contact or the holding penalty before he picked off, that might have been the play. I mean, that could have swung it for us, and unfortunately it didn't.
Or the deflected ball that went through Edmonds' hands again. I don't know when is he gonna learn how to catch those? Seriously.
Again.
Yeah, again, you're right. Herm, what do you think? Are there anything that stuck out to you outside of what Evan mentioned?
No, well, I think both of you hit it on the head. The offensive line stunk, sucked, whichever one. Josh was under consistent pressure, but really no different than it was last December. Pittsburgh does have with TJ and Hayward, they have a very effective, and the Ingram, a very, very effective pass rush. But I think I saw Micah Hyde say this week that you're right. We had no turnovers, and that was a big one with Trey White because it was questionable to me, but I'm biased. And that drive would have been stalled and we moved forward. But the defense didn't get them off the field. You remember they made Claypool. They made some catches when we all we had to do was stop them, get them off the field, and give ourselves another shot at scoring, which in the second half was definitely it was a struggle for us. But offensively, I was disappointed. I think you started the whole cast with. I think us and Bills Nation were very disappointed, obviously, with the outcome. But the defense, Evan, I think you hit it on the head. Defense played overall, I think, pretty well. We held the running game in check, but Ben made some throws that we weren't able to get them off the field, and we lost the game. So we move on until next week, and we have Miami.
That's right. And before we get on to Miami, just a couple numbers I wanted to bring up. The offensive line pressures goes as followed. Feliciano gave up 8 pressures. Dawkins gave up 5. Williams gave up 5. Mitch Morse gave up 3. Ford gave up 2. Bakker gave up 1 in his limited action. And the penalties, again, Feliciano 1, Dawkins 3, Williams and Morse all had 1. So when they weren't getting beat, they were holding. And it, a lot of Bills Mafia will always blame the refs, but these were legitimate holds. And say what you will about the reverse, where, maybe or maybe not we weren't getting the holding calls. But, I mean, Dawkins and Feliciano were tackling defensive linemen out there.
Right. And then there's a thing that I think is always worth bringing up whenever people, are saying like, oh, something about the refs. It's like, did you ever think maybe there's just a possibility that one team was just objectively holding more than the other? Like,
yeah,
I think that was the case in this game. Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to bring up was that Dayball, and as Jared Reed brought up, Dayball was under a lot of scrutiny. Now, I'm not one of these guys who constantly berate Dayball. I think he's good, but that being said, there are times where he goes to the well way too much, and it's one thing when the play actually worked to begin with, but as I brought up in the post-game show, these jet sweep motions, fake, when the back kind of flanks out in the flat, and Josh just keeps it. I don't know if it's an RPO. I don't know if it's a design run, but it clearly wasn't working. We got the message that the Steelers were looking for it with their comments regarding Josh running prior to the game, and we just kept on doing it and getting minimal gains. So when we go to the well too much, when we have that that 4th and 1 a la Bledsoe 2005 play, like I honestly, was he watching old film and he just saw Bledsoe and McGahee run it? The defense was set up a little bit different, and clearly they did not bite. So, warranted hate for Dayball in those calls, in my opinion. I just don't think that I'm not going to berate him for the style that he, passing a lot, but those calls definitely scratched some head. I had to scratch my head after watching that. But let's get into the matchup with Miami. Re-examining last year's games, obviously. Obviously, the biggest thing is Allen owns the Dolphins. He's 5-1 as a starter. He's got a 64 career completion percentage for 1,500 yards, around 260 a game, 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I read a stat that I think like 20 or 25% of his total touchdowns come against the Dolphins. And he has a quarterback rating of 114. Both games, the Bills scored a lot of points. I think the first one was a lot closer than we all expected. And then the second one, Miami didn't really get off the bus. Herm, is there anything that you can take from the either one of the last 2 games that, you can kind of bring forward going into this week's matchup?
Well, looking back, you remember quarterback Fitzpatrick, one of our ex-guys, one of his 9 teams I think he's been on now, or whatever it is. But he quarterbacked that first game, if you remember the majority. And the second game, Tua was in there, which was I think week 17, the 56-point blowout. And we sat our guys. But Miami, taking a look at Miami blitzes and taking a look at what last week Miami blitzed 48% of the time against the Patriots. We used spread offense 44% of our offensive plays against the Steelers, and they only blitzed 1 time. They had a 4-man pass rush. But as you said, Josh has a 60% completion rate against the blitz with Miami over his last two seasons of playing them, and he's thrown for 8 touchdowns, no interceptions over the last 2 seasons, as I did a little bit of homework for this. So if we can get him to perform up to that expectation, because Miami is a blitzing team, they don't have that front 4 that can put that rush on, the ferocious pass rush that Pittsburgh put on us. And they did it last December. Last Sunday was no exception, and we didn't answer the bell. But I think it fits right into Josh's narrative. If he has his feet on the ground and his head on correct Sunday, he's very, very good against the blitz. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you bring up good points, great stats. I think it's clear and obvious when the Dolphins, even if they don't blitz, if they're going to go man up like they did the last two games, that's ballsy, and it clearly didn't work out for them. I mean, Stephon Diggs went 8 for 153 and 7 for 76 over the last two games, mind you, having the second game only being 2 quarters. John Brown, these were his most significant games last year, 4 for 82 and a touchdown and 4 for 72 and a touchdown in 2 quarters. This is against man coverage. I know Xavier Howard, I believe, was injured in the first game,
Right.
but I think if they go man up, they're asking for trouble. Evan, do you have anything to add regarding previous matchups against the Dolphins?
Well, I want to see what the Dolphins sort of retooled offensive line will do to that pass rush for the Bills, and whether this would be a proper coming out game, because Tua is not the quarterback that gets rid of the ball as fast as Ben does. And even though, I did say that I did use the term, retooled with Miami's offensive line, but it's still probably like a bottom 5 unit, I'd say, in the league, probably. There's no like spot on that line where you could say like, hey, that's a solid player right there. Like that's going to be a player that's going to be there for the next at least 5 years. I don't think they have a player like that. And then, yeah, like I think very easily the Bills could just do sort of the Steelers strategy of just blitzing forward and dropping guys back into coverage and daring Tua to challenge them deep. And that might work out. But that's probably not what McDermott is going to do, I wouldn't think, knowing his record. But
yeah, it's interesting. And moving on to Miami specifically last week, it was a weird game. It seemed like New England had a lot of the momentum. It seemed like New England played better. They had more yards. They had a better conversion percentage. They had more first down. They held onto the ball more than Miami. The problem is they couldn't score in the red zone, and they turned the ball over in key situations. I mean, Miami was only 4 for 11 on third down. And like you said, Tua struggles when he's under pressure. Not necessarily the blitz, but when he is forced to make a decision, I feel like that's when he makes his mistake, because sometimes it makes him go on to that second read, and that's where his weakness is. Up until now, he's that one read kind of quarterback. So, I mean, that one that he threw up for the interception, it was clear his first guy wasn't there, and he just threw the ball up. So if we can get some of those, that'd be great. Did either of you guys watch the game between Miami and New England? And if so, do you have any comments on it? I'll let you lead us off, Evan.
Yeah, I watched most of it. I went back and watched most of it. One of the things I'm looking forward to when it comes to this game, after seeing some of the footage from the first game, is what Jalen Waddle can do against the Bills defense. Because like I said, if the Bills decide to go with the idea of, dropping guys back into coverage, I'd like to see, if they try to use Jalen Waddle and like have him run a lot of like crosser or drag routes, maybe have him on screens as well. Those are quick passes for Tua to do. Because obviously, well, we're probably going to touch on this in a bit. Obviously, Will Fuller is not going to play. And at this point, according to Brian Flores, it's just sort of like a day-to-day thing. I don't want to speculate. That sounds like a mental health thing to me. Hopefully he gets better. But when it comes to evaluating this game on Sunday, he is a big weapon that the Dolphins will not have. So I want to watch for Waddle. Yeah.
Herm, is there anything that you picked up in their week 1 matchup against New England?
Well, I went back and watched some of the game, but as you said, the Patriots, you had the turnover in the red zone, which was Xavier Howard. And Miami now is on a 23-game streak in terms of at least one turnover. So we had 4 fumbles last week. We lost 1, but that's something that we need to tighten up, because They are a ball hawking team. They're pretty quick moving around. In terms of Waddle, what Evan was just talking about, and some of the things I've been reading, is the fact that they're looking to put him in the slot, and we're talking about how effective Tyron Johnson will be if that's the matchup, which he may see most of the time if he's in the slot. But Tua does hold on to the ball. I read a thing that Ben was getting it on average 2 seconds. He was getting rid of the ball, so we didn't have many opportunities. Even though we touched him a few times and didn't take him down, or he got rid of it. But Tua is he holds the ball, and if you put some pressure on him, I agree. I think this may be the game that we can get some turnovers on him and hopefully turn him into some scoring opportunities.
Yeah, and this is a good chance to segue into the injuries, as Evan already touched on. We'll start with the Dolphins. Their nose tackle, Raekwon Davis, will be out for the game, so that should be big, specifically for the interior offensive line, who struggled last week. And then, like Evan mentioned, Will Fuller is MIA. He was due back off his suspension. Flores declined to really go into any detail, so that's that could be alarming, but Evan said, we'll have to see day to day. As far as the Bills go, they're pretty healthy. I believe they just have 3 guys questionable, and that would be Star Latulele. Obviously, he missed last week with that calf injury. We have Gabe Davis, who seemed to limp off of the field on one of those 4th down attempts. He's got an ankle. And the new guy on the report would be F.A. Obata, who's questionable. The good news with Obata, like we spoke last week, it seems he is pretty interchangeable with Boogie Basham, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Boogie instead of Obata if he couldn't go. Not really anything, in my opinion, that would impact the game much. But Herm, is there anything that you got anything as far as injuries? Do you think it'll play an impact, or you think it'll just be kind of standard?
No, well, I saw that Will Fuller, as they've explained it, personal issues for Miami, which is a factor. Raekwon Davis is a big one right there in the middle of the defensive line, and he's on IR, so he's going to be out for a few games for Miami. With not on the injury side, but Moss being inactive and Breida last week was 4 yards and 4 carries. I thought there were some times last year before Moss got hurt that he was pretty effective or interchanging with Singletary. So I'm going to see what happens with that one in terms of the being inactive again, a healthy scratch. So I don't know what the reasoning is internally with the thinking there, but other than that, Star, as you said, with the calf is questionable, and Davis, but I think you covered it pretty well. But we got to put
Evan, you got anything to add to that?
Nothing in particular. Just that's a good point that was brought up about Obata and Basham sort of being interchangeable at this point. It'd be nice to get Basham in there for just a few snaps at least. I know they kept Epinesa inactive his rookie year for the first couple games, but
right.
There's nothing wrong with throwing Basham in there and just letting him learn a little bit that way, especially against a weak line.
I mean, it would definitely be good because this is a team that they're going to see again. So as you play guys within your own division, you kind of learn how they play the position. So I agree. I would look forward to seeing that. Getting into the actual matchup itself, it's early, so a lot of these stats don't really mean much, but the Bills average 16 points a game, the Dolphins 17. The Bills have quite a few more passing yards at 254 to 185. Agree again with the rushing too, 117 to 74, which may be surprising because we didn't run the ball all that often. However, obviously the Dolphins gave up a little bit less at 16. We gave up 23. A stat that I wanted to bring up, kind of touching on everything that we spoke about with Tua. Tua's average depth of target last year was 8 yards. This is a guy to me who throws a slant, who throws a quick out, who throws a drag route, and that's all he's been really successful doing. Now this year he has 10, but that being said, he was 1 for 5 under pressure, and one of those incompletions was an interception. Is there anything that sticks out to you guys number wise between the Dolphins going into week 2? Evan, I'll start off with you.
It's 1 week. You can't really put too much stock into the numbers in the first game, especially since every team plays every team differently. Everything in regards to Tua, the way he targets his certain receivers, the way he goes through his reads, it's already all been touched on. Really, there's nothing much new to talk about. It should just be interesting to see how he adjusts from the awful game he played in week 17 of last year against the Bills.
Agreed. Herm, you got anything to add to that?
No, just that our offense obviously has to play better and puts them and get off to a better start. We had the 75-yard kickoff return, and basically, what did we go 3 and out and a field goal to start the game when that was an opportunity right there to we all want touchdowns, obviously, but that was the beginning of what turned out to be a struggle. And okay, their defense was very tough and very outstanding, but as you said, they gave up. Miami's defense gave up to Mac Jones, a rookie, about over 400 yards total offense to the Patriots. I think our offense is better than the Patriots. We're biased, I think, all three of us. But this, hopefully, that first game was an aberration. We can't afford to. That was a conference game, and now we got a divisional game, and Miami beat a divisional opponent last week. So I don't want to go down 2 games to the Dolphins the second week of the season. So that's my comment on that situation.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. You'd be digging yourself a big hole. I mean,
Sure.
Everyone's kind of pumping the brakes after week 1. All things considered, it's 1 game. But if you go down 2 in your conference and 1 in the division, that's a big hole. And I wouldn't be listening to too many radio shows after that, especially if we go down to Miami and come back with a loss.
Right.
Let's get into some matchups. Now there's a bunch that I have listed. So I will start, and then you guys can kind of pick as we go. Obviously, last year we saw a lot of Gesicki, specifically on Wallace. That seemed to be a matchup that helped them move the ball, specifically in the first game. Ryan Fitzpatrick is that guy that loves hitting those seam routes, so it's a little different dynamic when you have Tua behind center. So that's what stuck out to me last year's matchup. I'm going to go with Miami's offensive line versus Buffalo's defensive line. Now, I don't think Miami's offensive line is anything great, but the one thing that they have is size. This is the heaviest offensive line in the league, if I believe, going against a notorious light defensive line. Now, as we know, we've had heavy offensive lines with the Langston Walkers and what have you. We've had some big groups. It doesn't mean you're good at what you do. But I'm curious to see if the Bills will be able to generate the pass rush necessary to to get Tua off his spot, and 2 to force an error. I think we were adequate last week. I think we had decent pressure, but like we've all mentioned, the time to throw was just low, and we knew that going into the game. So with another guy who likes to get the ball out fast and one who's much shorter, I still think that plan of getting your arms up could be key into stopping this Miami offense. I'll let Herm, you start us off. What are some matchups you think are going to play a role in next week's game?
I'm looking forward to Howard and Diggs. As we saw in the Pittsburgh game, Stephon had, I think, 7 catches, but for not a lot of yards, not a lot of yards
If it was for a nice amount of yards.
Yeah, exactly. 69 yards, right. But and Howard had 10 interceptions last year, and also he had that fumble. He created the fumble last week against New England, which saved the game. I think when New England fumbled while they were in the red zone. Well, hopefully they were thinking they were going in for a score. So that one there, I'm looking forward to because you have an all-pro cornerback against what I feel maybe the best receiver in the game, and if Josh is on his game, I think that's a battle that we could win, and we have to be hungry. I'm looking forward to that one.
Great points. Evan, what matchups are you looking forward to most?
Probably the big one for me would be Gesicki versus whoever they decide. I have a feeling they're not going to use Wallace this time, especially since the Dolphins have more than just really one good receiving threat now, because you got Parker and obviously and Gesicki, and then Waddle there as well. So I'm feeling they're probably going to put Wallace on Waddle, I would think. But it really depends on whether they're going to put Teron Johnson on Gesicki or Edmonds, Milano, Poyer or Hyde. I'm just looking for just one of those guys to neutralize Gesicki, because if you get one of those guys to neutralize them early in the game, maybe you just sort of stick with that, and that's your game plan for the rest of the way.
Yeah, but then again, you also got to remember too, is this is a defense that is predominantly zone, so the matchups may change. It's going to be a tough one to kind of, and when you run a zone defense, it's easy to place blame, but you don't necessarily know where everyone is supposed to be coverage wise. Some might be a mental error, some might be physically getting beat. So moving on to an actual player that we're looking out for. Herm, give me a Bills player who you're keying in on. Not necessarily matchup wise, but some guy you might look for a bounce back game, some guy that matches up good against the Dolphins.
I had that already decided. Josh. He's after the performance of last week, as I said, I was disappointed, but along with Bills Nation, some people in the media and not only with Josh, but some of the other players in the league, that they didn't play enough in the preseason just to get some work under their belt against real competition, be it first teams or second team, but just playing against an opposition in live games. Pittsburgh's defense obviously had a big factor there, but he just looked he looked a little shaky, a little unnerved at times, even on some of the running. But one thing I didn't like, and you mentioned it earlier in the play calling, is you're exposing him to some unnecessary hits with those deliberate runs. As you said, you weren't sure if they were RPOs or if they were by design. Sometimes they look like they were by design, and the teams were waiting and they were ready for him. He's most effective as he's in the pocket and he can get out and get on the move where he has an opportunity to either run or throw. And he did that. He did have a couple of good runs in the game that were effective for first downs. But he has to have, as you use the term, a bounce back game. And this is against a team that he's been hugely successful, as I think you said earlier. About 25% of his touchdowns in his career have come against Miami. So I'd like to up that percentage a lot more here on this Sunday. So I'm going with Josh Allen.
Hey, can't argue with you there. For sure, if we're looking for a victory, we need Josh Allen to step the game up just a tad. Evan, how about you? What are you looking forward to on the Bills? Player to watch.
I'm going to say Levi Wallace. I'm curious as to who they match him up with this time, or who they predominantly get him to cover, because we all know he struggled against them, especially in week 1 last year. So I honestly don't have a feeling that Wallace could very well be covering Parker actually more than Waddle, because Waddle is a lot faster than Wallace. And White can keep up with him a lot better. I don't think this was going to happen, but it wouldn't completely shock me. So I'm just curious to see whether Wallace can contain Waddle so that he can waddle away to the very next day. Bum, 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 ba-dum.
I like it.
That was good.
I'm sorry. I had to
Never
do
seen
it at some point. I had to do it at some point.
That was good.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Waddle's lining up in the slot a lot, right?
That's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, watching some of that game last week, and that's where he's most effective. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting.
I agree. Effective for sure, and that's a big task for Taron Johnson, who I thought had a very solid game, more specifically in the run. But a lot of those pass plays, especially that third down that got the final field goal for the Steelers, he was right there in his hip pocket. You got to give the credit to Ben. He put the ball where it needed to be.
And he made a great catch on it too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, they made some contested catches. After going back, there were 3 or 4 where, even that one that Levi had, the PI, he was getting his head around very quickly at the very last second, and his hand was where it needed to be. But anyway, moving on for me.
50 catches last week, and the Bills just happened to be on the wrong side of the 50 for, unfortunately, a lot more than 50% of them, it seemed.
You're right.
Yeah. They were in good position, and I'll take it because you're going to get those bounces one way or another throughout the season. For me, my player to watch is Mr. John Feliciano, the human turnstile. I like the guy. I like what he brings to the table. I think he has that flexibility to be any interior lineman that you need him to be. He knows what the guy next to him is supposed to be doing. I guess I kind of like the initiative that he took to lose weight, but we will see if that actually is a detriment. He got thrown around like a rag doll, just like he did against Kansas City. I need to see if Feliciano is a starting caliber interior offensive lineman. We have, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we have a big decision to make with Mitch Morris at the end of this year. This is our out. This is the year where we can cut bait and not lose, or not accrue dead cap. And in my vision, if that were to be the case, Feliciano would slide over to center. After last week, I'm putting that plan on hold because I'm not quite sure if he has what it takes to be a starting offensive lineman. He may be a swing guy. He may be your plug and play backup, but I really need to see him bounce back, especially when we're going against a significantly worse defensive line. They're not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not Pittsburgh.
Right.
They're not. There's no Cam Hayward on that defensive line. There's no TJ Watt, roaming, the amoeba in the middle linebacker role. That's not happening this game. So it's going to be a true test for him. We're going to find out a lot. I really hope that most of this comes to lack of playing with each other in the offseason, specifically the preseason. But he's a guy that I'm really going to keep my eye on, and I believe we're going to find out one way or another if we're going to be drafting high guard or center high in the draft next year. Moving on to keys to victory.
Wait, can I add one thing on the Feliciano?
Let's go. Travis? Obviously,
Travis, can I add one thing?
This is a division game. We need the victory for multiple reasons. If there was a Buffalo or an offensive key, Evan, what would you go with?
Sorry, I was just laughing at the fact that you just went like, screw you, Herm. I'm just going to talk over you.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I wasn't listening.
I didn't know if you could hear. I didn't know if you could hear me.
Did we lose you?
No, I asked you if it was. I wanted to say one thing on your Feliciano as your pick of somebody you wanted to watch. I was going to add one thing. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Herm.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, he was laughing.
Did we lose Evan?
Yeah, I wanted to add one thing about Feliciano since you
go
brought
for
him up. So no, this is for Evan and whoever's watching. This past week, this was good. Past week, I had a new roof put on my house, so I had a dumpster sitting in my driveway. And our host Travis came by while I'm standing with the roofer in my driveway, and Travis pulls over and rolls down his window and asks, "Is Feliciano in the dumpster?" And the roofer had no idea what he was talking about. Then I told him he played like trash. You remember that?
I would have just said Feliciano is the dumpster.
No, Travis pulls over and goes, "Herm, is Feliciano in there?" And the roofer goes, "What's he talking about?" And I said that we felt he played like trash, so we were going to look for him in this big dumpster I had sitting in the middle of the driveway. So I was adding that onto your timely comment that he was the person that you want to watch and hopefully upgrade, Travis. So sorry for the interruption.
No, it's all good.
I couldn't resist.
All right.
The entire time the camera was on me, I'm just like,
no, my mistake. Well, you're up now, Evan. What is your Bills key, or offense key to victory?
Offense one. Probably the play of our secondary receiver options. I would either that. No, actually no. Probably our ability of our running backs to pick up blitzes. As Herm brought up before, Miami is going to blitz obviously a lot more than the Steelers are. As long as you blitz more than once, you're blitzing more than the Steelers are. So McDermott said that Moss had a good practice this week. I'm hoping he's active and he can be back there pass blocking on those relevant downs. And just general overall pass blocking. Even just to let Josh just to step up in the pocket, make those throws. And yeah, that's just better pass blocking. That's all there is. Like,
yeah, it will definitely make the difference. Herm, what do you got for your offensive key to victory?
Well, the pass blocking, and we dropped some balls. I mean, there were some errant throws by Josh, but I can remember 3 balls that were catchable, which could have extended drives or picked up first downs, and they put us in 3rd and 3 situations, or even in the 4th and 1s. But the bottom line is you got to make plays. When Josh does put the ball on you have to catch the ball. We have professional receivers, so I just want our offense overall to perform better.
Yeah, it seems like we had a little lag on each phase of the game, whether it was the blocking, the passing, or receiving, and it unfortunately spread out through. It wasn't like it all hit on one play. So one time the ball was overthrown, the other one was dropped. The next play we weren't able to cover up all the defensive linemen. So it was tough to watch. But going on for my offensive key, it's going to really be sustaining drives. We're going down to Miami. It's going to be hot. This is going to be the hottest game of the year, clearly. Kind of ticks me off when we play them so early in Miami. But I really think if we can sustain drives, regardless of scoring, we just can't go 3 and out. We can't turn the ball over early in series, because what will end up happening is it'll get our defense gassed, and the last thing we need is for our defense to struggle in the heat. So long sustained drives, take what the defense gives you. I think we started to do that a little bit more as the game went on. Unfortunately, we really couldn't do much when we got on the other side of the 50. So for me, that's the offensive key to victory. Now moving on to the defensive key to victory. Evan, you want to lead us off?
I'd probably say the ability of the edges to pressure Tua. Cynthia earlier in the chat brought up that hopefully Rousseau meets Tua face-to-face a few times. I hope he doesn't, because I want him to come around the left side, him in the back, and cause strip sacks. But in all,
good point.
I know what she meant in all seriousness. Yeah, it would be nice to get some of those edges to be able to convert some of their pressure to sacks as opposed to just solely pressures. Even if they don't, Tua is not a great quarterback when he's under any sort of duress. So I think that if they can even just get some pressure, that should be enough.
Yeah, great point. Herm, what do you got?
Defensively, as you said earlier, that Tua likes to throw a lot of crossing routes, short ball, slant. I want Edmonds to hold on when the ball, as you said earlier, he dropped that ball. I said the same thing. I've been watching the game when he just dove out there and the ball went right through his hands. It's not you're not going to get a ball any softer dropping into your hands. So I think he's going to get some opportunities. Our linebackers, Milano played well. Our linebackers, because they do use a lot of crossing routes and underneath, and because Tua doesn't really like to take shots into the seams, as you said, as Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick was much more of a gambler. I think has a bigger arm than Tua did, even at this stage of his career. So our linebackers and the nickel back on those crossing routes, I think we have an opportunity to pick off some balls possibly and get some turnovers. Give our offense an opportunity to have some short fields, as Pittsburgh had some short fields on us, and they took advantage of them last week.
Great point. For me, it's going to be forcing Tua off his first read. I think that's where everything breaks down. The pressure helps, obviously, but if you can play coverage well enough for 3-4 seconds and make Tua read the defense and go through his progressions, I think that's where he struggles. I think that's when he starts to feel the pressure, whether it's there or not. And I also believe that's where he makes most of his mistakes. So if you get this guy off his first read, you keep him uncomfortable, you're going to have opportunities to make plays. Like Evan said, we need to get those turnovers, and that's the way I believe the easiest way. Obviously, pressure versus anybody is going to work, but against Tua specifically, getting him off his first read and getting him thinking more rather than just playing ball. I mean, last year, I believe we rattled him a little bit. And even when he was going with his first read, that's how Norman got his first interception. The ball was off the mark, and it was just easy, high stepping into the end zone from there. So I think if you get him off
if I can interrupt, sorry.
Yeah.
The interception that he threw to Norman last year wasn't actually really a bad throw from Tua. It was the one where Parker literally just slipped and fell, and he was expecting him on a slant route.
Gotcha.
So that was, yeah. Sorry to kill your buzzkill, but
No, it's all.
He didn't play very well in that game. Other than that, yeah. So
yeah. So it was a mulligan. All right, we got it.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts before we go ahead and predict the game. I'll just give mine. I think you really couldn't ask for a better setup for the Bills to bounce back. It's a team. Obviously, every year is a new year, but the coaching staff is the same. The style of defense is the same. And ever since Josh came into the league, he's played well against Miami. So until we prove otherwise, I'm going to have to go with Buffalo. So rolling into our predictions, I'm going to say 27-20. I think it's going to be a little closer. I'm not feeling as confident after last week, but I still think the Bills will be able to cover. So I'm going to go 27-20. Herm, what you got?
I think I'm going to go with sticking with my same score I had last week, 31-21. I think we're ready to put some points on the board, especially after that anemic performance we had last week. Against a tougher defense, but at the same time, I feel we can score on anybody if we're playing on top of our game, and I think the Bills are ready now to go down there, take this victory, and pick up a victory in the East, which we need, and also we can't afford, as I said earlier in the conversation, to go down 2 games in the conference and give Miami. Miami will have beaten 2 AFC East teams, so we got to be a little bit hungrier than we were in Pittsburgh. There were times I felt we almost looked lackadaisical. We went out there and expected to perform as advertised. You remember we're a potential Super Bowl contender, but now I think we were brought back down to earth with that performance. And okay, let's go down to Miami and perform up to the level that all of us expected. So I have the Bills at 31-21.
Evan, closing thoughts and predictions.
You took my score, Herm. just to be different, I'll say 30-20.
10-point game.
Yeah. But no.
All right,
sorry.
No. If you have anything to add to it, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, I have a feeling it could be another one of those games where Tua gets another maybe garbage time TD to make it 30-20 or something like that. More likely, I'd say probably 30-13 would be the more technically accurate score. But I do think that Tua will play better, but by better, I think he'll be better by terms of like your standard quarterback like metrics and such. He won't be throwing, these awful interceptions this time around, but I don't think he'll be incredibly good by terms of moving the ball. So that's where I think Miami's offense will struggle in that regard as opposed to the turnovers.
All right, very good, gentlemen. Now we'll move into the 5-day forecast. Just like we did last week. Give me clear or cloudy. I want to know if we're sunshine and 90 or is it a torrential downpour. For Monday, the same starting 5 offensive line marches out on the first series. Herm, what do you think?
Cloudy.
Who do you think it'll be?
For starting 5? Well, I would say, they were talking about Cody Ford, a swap. I don't know.
What, with Bacher?
Yeah, because Mitch Morse is going to be there, and Williams is going to be there. Dawkins, and so yeah, I'd say the swap between Ford and Bacher.
What do you think, Evan?
I'm probably going to say it will be the same, just because they want continuity, just for the sake of it.
This was a tough one because I don't know. I guess it's McDermott or Bobby Johnson, whoever. I mean, remember when Mitch Morse came back completely healthy and he just didn't start at center?
Mm-hmm.
They've done some odd things at offensive line. Now we don't know what's going on in practice, but this is a tough one because I want to say cloudy. I want to say that Feliciano sits. But you bring up a good point with the continuity. I mean, but what keeps going back and forth in my mind is all you ever hear is they want the best 5 on the field at the same time. So I guess ultimately, for vamping so long, I'm going to say clear only because I don't think Bacher really offers anything more than what the other 2 guards bring to the table. Now, that being said, I do expect to see him in the game. Quentin Spain started that week 2 game, but he got pulled immediately, I believe. So
and that was after he got a 3-year extension too.
Yeah.
Oh, who else got a 3-year extension?
Good call. But yeah, I think there would be a quick pull or even just a rotation because we've seen that as well. All right, moving on to Tuesday. Zach Moss is going to be active. Evan, what say you?
Oh, it's clear as day, I think.
Yeah.
Like you just, yeah.
I'm not even going that he wasn't active last week. Especially with the game plan. I mean, it was bizarre that they didn't want a better run. He's a stout run blocker. He stonewalled TJ Watt last year. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say this is clear. Thank you, Mr. Breida, but you will be the break glass in case of emergency. Herm, what do you think?
I'm going to make it 3. Clear. Felt that way.
I think that was an easy one. All right, moving on to Wednesday. Levi Wallace gives up a touchdown in coverage. I'll lead off. I'm going to say he does, but it's not because I'm on the Levi Wallace hate train. I just think that if he'll end up getting matched up with Parker one way or another, and this is a guy who's going to be able to out physical Levi Wallace. So I believe they're going to score a touchdown, and it's not necessarily going to be on the ground. So I'm going to go out on the limb and give that one to all the Levi Wallace haters. Evan, what do you think?
This one's a little complicated because my objective answer is going to be clear, but I feel like Wallace is going to give up a touchdown, on the stat sheet, but it's more so because he was happened to be the closest player. It's you have to credit the touchdown to someone. So I feel like he could give up one of those touchdowns. So my answer has to be clear, but that's my reasoning. It's a different one than yours.
No, it makes sense. How about you, Herm?
I'm going cloudy. I feel like Levi has to redeem himself, and he knows that. I mean, the set of receivers, to me, their receivers, that trio is a little tougher than Pittsburgh's, but at the same time, I think I don't think Tua can get the ball unless somebody breaks free. But I'm going with cloudy.
All righty. Listen, I don't think either takes are wild. It's pure analytics, and I don't think Levi Wallace. I don't think that he necessarily is the reason why he may give up. I think, Evan, you gave the best analysis of it. Somebody's going to give up a touchdown, and he just might be the guy in the left and the back of the left end zone near the pylon. All right, moving on to Thursday. The Bills will force at least 2 turnovers. Now, Evan, you were the first person to start talking about the turnover game and how important it would be for the Buffalo Bills to increase their total from last week, which was 0.
Yeah, which was 0.
What do you
which
think?
Wasn't
do you
great.
think Bills...
Yeah, I had none. Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm gonna go with exactly 2. So, what would that be? Clear.
Yeah, clear. Yeah. No, it was at least 2.
Yeah. Because like I mentioned before, I think most of the stops that the Bills are going to make on defense are going to come down to just their ability to just stop them from moving the ball. But I feel like there might be a couple of honestly unforced errors, either by Tua or just lazy ball carrying.
Good point. Herm, what do you think?
Clear. I believe that we're going to get at least 2 turnovers. So it's time. I think the team. I think if not a fumble and an interception or a couple of interceptions, I think we're ready to put our offense in good positions, field positions. So I'm clear with that one.
Yeah, I'm going to join you too. I think especially coming out of the game, I don't know if it was Frazier or McDermott. I think it was Frazier who mentioned that the Bills need to get turnovers. They needed to get their hands on the ball more often. And I think that's going to be a point of emphasis, that culminating with Tua, who may be a bit prone to turning the ball over when under duress. I think it's a perfect storm for the Bills to get at least 2. The defense played well and they're hungry. So to me, that's a easy call. And finally, for Friday, Allen's completion percentage is over 65%. Now, let me get the stat. So he's 64 career-wise versus Miami. Now, that factors in 2 years of sub 60% completion percentage total. Herm, do you think Josh Allen will complete 65% of his passes on Sunday?
I've got to go clear because I'm being optimistic here. I got to go clear.
There we go.
Got to go clear.
Evan?
I'm gonna go clear on that as well. I think even if his like average sort of like either depth of target or yards per completion drops, um, I could see them maybe being a little more like reined back with their approach in an attempt to either get Allen's confidence back up again, or the fact that they might not want to attack Howard and Jones and Rowe in the same way as last year. Maybe change it up a little bit. So I'm going to say clear on that one.
Yeah. Listen, my forecast is like a week in San Diego. I'm clear across the board, baby. Allen's going to complete over 65% of his passes. I think the emphasis will be on reining in his throws, not necessarily trying to bite off more than he can chew all the time. I feel like he was pressing to go deep a bit in last Sunday's game, and I think he's going to just take what the defense gives him, and with an offense who throws the ball as much as the Bills, I think that's an easy recipe to get to that number around the 68, 69%. So, yeah. Before we finish up this segment, I forgot, last week we did do 6, so I took one out that we all got right, and it got us down to each 2 for 5. So we're clear across the board there. It's not going to work out the way this week because me and Evan, we both have the same predictions, and Herm had 2 cloudies thrown in there. So expect a little change up. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. Let's get some takes from the fans. I believe we have one here from Mr. Jared Reed. Singletary with 100+ and 2 touchdowns. Evan, I'll let you start.
I'm going to say no. That would be if we're doing clear or cloudy, that would be I think a downpour. Mainly just because, they're going to run 2 running backs. Josh is going to vulture those TDs away from the rushing TDs away from Singletary or Moss, as he always likes to do. And then, of course, they're predominantly a passing team. So, and there's always the chance that, you could always say there's the chance that, one of them just breaks off a 60-yard run all of a sudden. But Singletary doesn't have that kind of speed where I don't think that could come insanely easy to him. So, yeah, that would just be
quick caveat. Instead of having to have both of those stats, the 2 touchdowns and 100 yards, do you think he can get one or the other?
I think he could get the 2 TDs. But not necessarily rushing TDs.
Yes, and that wasn't specified, so good one. Herm, I feel like I know your answer. What do you think on the 100+ and 2 TDs?
Cloudy.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll get enough carries to get 100 yards unless, as Evan made the point, if he broke off 60, 70-yard run, but then he'd have to outrun somebody to get 60 to 70 yards once he got through the line. And 2 touchdowns. He had the right expression. Once you get inside that red zone, especially in the 10, within the 5, you got Josh. Josh is going to vulture. Is that the term you use, Evan? He's effective. So I can't argue with it.
Did either of you see, or did either of you watch the game on Thursday night?
Oh, I watched it last night.
Oh yeah, it was last night. I guess getting my news of the week mixed up.
That giant debacle.
Yeah, there was a point of the game that I just laughed at so much where Saquon he was 9 carries for 39 yards, and he had already had a 41-yard run.
42.
Oh yeah,
or 42, whatever it was.
He broke off that run, but all those other losses he took.
Yeah, and then it was all a loss from there.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you guys. I don't think it'll happen. And not to mention, the Bills are not very good at pounding the ball outside of Josh inside the 5. They struggle with that, or at least have shown to struggle. Now I'm going to pose this one. Instead of taking it as a question, I'm going to put it into this is what he's thinking. Jerry Hughes will actually get a sack instead of a bunch of pressures. Herm, what do you think? You think Jerry Hughes gets his first sack of the season?
I think he will. I'm clear on that one. I think because Ben was getting rid of the ball quickly. And even in some of the games in the past when Jerry Hughes has gotten there, I believe he'll get Tua. Either Tua will be forced his way, and he'll pick up a vulture sack as Tua's moving away from him. But I do believe this is the week he'll get a sack because he does put pressure on.
What do you think, Evan?
As Lone Wolf says there, he puts on pressure.
Yeah, maybe a coverage sack or unblocked sack or something like that.
Yeah,
He'll get
yeah,
his.
you took
He
that,
will get a
stole
ton
that.
of. I think he'll get a solid amount of pressures, but I think his sack will come on one of those plays where it's not really him doing anything great. It's just he just happened to be the player in the area. But in terms of like players who actually get sacks, probably Rousseau, and it's mainly just the handedness difference, right? Like this question would be, I think, a lot easier for me to answer in the affirmative if Tua was a righty.
Right.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Although I feel like I saw Hughes on the left side for a handful of snaps. I don't know if I was. I feel like I saw him do it a couple of times.
Even if he was,
right?
Even if he was, Hughes is usually a lot more productive from the right side. So
correct. I think you're right. Like going back to the Denver game, that strips. Oh no, that wasn't him. Never mind.
Yeah, that was Trey.
Yeah. I was like, he picked up the ball, but I do think you're going to see a time. You're going to see Tua try to step up into the pocket. Nothing's there, and then try to scramble a little bit. And Hughes is definitely the kind of guy who is able to track down quarterbacks. And I believe we got one more. This is a good one. Bills run the ball 20 plus times. I think if you account for Josh Allen scrambling and crossing the line of scrimmage with the ball in his hand, I'm gonna say clear. I think we do. Not by much, maybe 21, 23 times. But I think we do get it. Herm, what do you think?
Well, just to piggyback on what you said, if they run 20 times, it's going to be running backs 12 and Josh 8, something like that. But I hope, as you talked about earlier with Dayball, that you don't do those designated running plays because they were ineffective last week and you're exposing him to unnecessary hits. So 20 in total, 20 plus. Cloudy.
Ooh,
We love to throw
all right.
the ball.
All right.
Cloudy.
I'm gonna agree with you.
Evan?
I'm gonna agree with you, Travis, just in the sense that like they might just like call designed runs 14 or 15 times, but with Josh scrambling or improvising, it'll get to be 20.
So
Hopefully we get
that's
a
good
chance
one.
to ice the game.
Are the scrambles? They're runs technically, but
Yeah, they are.
runs.
They're attempts.
Yeah.
Once you cross the line of scrimmage
Tony said they run the ball, not they call runs or design runs 20 plus times.
to the running back. Yeah.
You got that, Tony.
The running back is not touching the ball 20 times. That's not.
Yeah, I don't think that would happen. No.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you guys this week. Hopefully the outcome is a little bit better than last week. And, we look forward to speaking to you next week on the forecast. Unfortunately, Fitzy won't be coming with us. That's sad. I wanted to see him play. But, any closing comments, Herm, before we get out of here?
No, I feel we need this game, even though it's only the second week of the season. As we talked about earlier, we took a loss in the conference last year. If everyone remembers, with our 13-3, we finished up one game behind Kansas City in terms of trying to get that home field. It's something that's far down the road, or so it seems, but we don't want to dig a hole 2 games down in the conference and also give Miami a 2-game advantage within our own division. So we need the game. Go Bills.
Well said. Evan?
This is an overused trope, but this is a must-win game. I think just staring at 0-2 in the face just looks really bad. If you're a player, that's gotta hurt your confidence a lot too, because it's just a 1-game difference. But I imagine 0-1 would look like heaven compared to 0-2, because 0-1 you could excuse as just like a bad week. And you don't want to go down 2 games to other conference opponents or division opponents if the Patriots were to sorry, no, crap, I forgot. Miami was the only team that in the division that won last week. So
The one, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I just hope that the Bills can get their record back to 500, and yeah.
Yeah, half the teams are 0-1 right now. Half the teams aren't going to be 0-2. So that's where, you're right. It's going to make a big difference. But I'm confident, as always. The Bills can win if they put it all together for sure. Other than that, folks, that about does it for the Friday night forecast. Tune in next week at 8:30 as we break down the Washington football team. Until then. See you next week. Go Bills.
Go Bills, everyone.
Go Bills.